One
Hmm.
bus to take you
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Well, that's good. I'm looking forward to hearing your story. I think you speaking with the other young lady. She spoke before too. She's also a doctor,
Hmm.
and she does her own. I think she
And
got
she
her
was
own
telling me about it.
school,
Like, yeah, I think she
something.
does like some engineering,
Yeah,
STEM prep for
mathematics.
students.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she.
yeah.
I think she got like her own academic program or something going on.
Hmm. That's good. That's good.
I think we probably.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I was like, am I going to get a good morning back? How's everyone feeling today? Good. I like it. How's the food? Even better. My name is Binti. I serve as a peer mentor for the Woodrick Center. We honor the original people, the Anishinaabe Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples. We recognize that Grand Rapids Community College is located on the land ceded to the United States in the Chicago Treaty of 1821. We also recognize the Grand River Bands of Ottawa Indians as the descendants of original tribes represented at this treaty's signing. We express our gratitude to the original people, past, present, and future, who have stewarded this land for generations. We understand this acknowledgement must be coupled with the relationship of advocacy and support for Indigenous people. We recognize our responsibility to continuously uphold our commitments towards Indigenous communities. This land acknowledgement recognizes the sovereignty of Indigenous people and affirms their history and our efforts to accountable to their needs. Next, we have Stephanie to share welcome remarks.
Good morning, everyone. um, Thank you so much for being a part of this, and welcome to our 31st annual Diversity Lecture Series. My name is Stephanie Brooks, as stated earlier, and I'm honored to be with you today to celebrate Black History Month and to be a part of this wonderful event. I'm currently in my sophomore year. I'm majoring in communications, and I am on track to graduate this April. Thank you, thank you. Yes. On behalf of Grand Rapids Community College, the Woodrick Center for Inclusion and Multicultural Affairs, and the Rise Up and Achieve initiative, thank you so much for joining us today. This year is especially meaningful as we recognize the 100th a national celebration of Black History Month. A moment that has both called us to reflect and to recommit. For 100 years, Black History Month has served as a space to honor the resilience, brilliance, and contributions of the Black community while also naming the ongoing work towards equity and justice. Here in Grand Rapids, Black history is deeply rooted in community, advocacy, and care. From early Black families who helped shape the city in the early 1900s to the leadership of our educators, faith leaders, and organizers who helped challenge segregation, housing discrimination, and inequitable access, Black residents have continuously shaped and strengthened the city of Grand Rapids. As we celebrate Black History Month, we are entering into an important season of reflection as a community and a campus. This year's Campus Common Reading program will align with two historic milestones: the 250th anniversary of the United States and the 175th anniversary of the city of Grand Rapids. This initiative invites us into year long exploration of democracy, history, civic belonging, and the contributions of the historically underrepresented communities in shaping both our city and our country. Through curated readings, student led projects, and collaborative programming, we will examine how civic identity, belonging, and participation shapes our shared future. This work aligns deeply with this year's theme: cultivating a culture of care. Care is more than kindness. Care is about responsibility. It is about understanding our history, acknowledging progress and setbacks, and choosing to engage in dialogue that strengthens democracy and our community. As we reflect on the 250 years of our nation and the 175 years of Grand Rapids, we must ask ourselves whose stories have been centered and whose stories have been overlooked. Black History Month reminds us that the story of the United States and the story of Grand Rapids cannot be fully told without honoring the leadership, resistance, creativity, and civic contributions of the Black community. Next, I'll be inviting Binti back up to talk more about the Woodrick Center. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. The Bob and Alicia Woodrick Center for Inclusion and Multicultural Affairs plays a vital role in advancing equity, inclusion, and belonging at Grand Rapids Community College. The center works to support students, particularly those who have been historically underserved, by addressing exclusionary practices, increasing access, and fostering culturally responsive and data-informed approaches to student success. Through campus-wide initiatives, the Woodrick Center promotes cultural awareness, empathy, civic engagement, and community partnerships. The center collaborates with students, faculty, staff, and community organizations across West Michigan to help create a campus where everyone feels seen, valued, and supported. Signature campus-wide initiatives include Cultural Connection 365, Brother to Brother, Alas, Assisting Latino to Achieve and Succeed, NEA Women with Purpose, and Rise Up and Achieve, all of which focus on identity development, leadership, wellness, and holistic student success. The Woodrick Center remains committed to ensuring that care is not just a value, but a daily practice at Grand Rapids Community College. Next up, we have Nikia.
Thank you, Binti. We also would like to take the time to thank everyone that has made this series a continued success. Thank you to our GRCC staff, students, and faculty members who helped us to make this year diversity lecture series a success behind the scenes. A special thank you to sponsor this year, Steelcase, Transfer to Bridges, Media and Tech Support, Future Tech, ALS Interpreter, Facilities, Creative Dining, and a thank you for all of us joining us here today. Thank you. If you are interested in supporting our lecture series, please email us at wcima.grcc.edu. We would be honored to have you support us and continue this innovative. That concludes our housekeeping items for the moment. I would like to bring up Gabe.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Gabe. I serve as the Brother to Brother coordinator in the Woodrick Center. As we celebrate Black History Month and reflect on 100 years of honoring Black excellence, sustaining programs like the Diversity Lecture Series, and student-centered initiatives requires ongoing support. We invite you to consider making a donation to the Woodrick Center for Inclusion and Multicultural Affairs. Your support helps maintain impactful programming, culturally affirming spaces, and opportunities that center care and community for our students. Every contribution makes a difference, and information on how to give will be shared on the screen this evening or afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, so just a few more housekeeping tips. At the conclusion of our speaker's presentation, there will be a brief moment for our audience to engage and ask questions. Thank you. Sorry. For our virtual audience, a QR code will pop up now for you to scan and submit any questions for our speaker as well. Participation are in our audience will also have the option to submit a question using the QR code or flag a staff member down for a mic to ask questions. We also have a feedback survey at the end of the presentation and Q&A. Please take a moment to complete the feedback survey as we will continue to plan lecture series and explore innovative ways to keep these important conversations flourishing. We want to hear from our participants. There will be a QR code for you to scan with your phone as well. Thank you so much. And now I would like to bring up Marcus.
Thanks, Kia. Robert Shorty joined GVSU in 2024 as Vice President for People, Equity, and Culture, serving as the university's inaugural Chief People and Inclusion and Equity Officer. In this position, he connects people-centered operations, including human resources, inclusion and equity, Office for Civil Rights and Title IX, and employee ombuds. He began his career as a social worker before moving into corporate human resources as diversity, equity, and inclusion leadership, including as Senior Director of Human Resources and Global Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Nike Supply Chain. He also worked in human resource leadership at Target, McDonald's, and Starbucks. His work in the private sector, including developing programs to expand access to higher education for frontline employees, partnering with high school students and adult learners with exploring corporate opportunities at the organizations he worked with. Robert earned a doctor's of philosophy and organizational development from Benedictine University in Lisle, Illinois. He holds a master's of human resource management degree from Keller Graduate School in Chicago. He received a bachelor's degree in sociology from Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois. Please help me give a warm welcome to Dr. Robert Short.
No worries. Nothing like having another fellow Chicagoan introduce you. So how are you all doing, Grand Rapids Community College? You're doing good? Awesome, awesome. Well, but hey, before we jump in, I wanted to start with some storytelling. Is that okay? All right, so before I start, let's just take just one collective breath together, because I think right now taking breaths together are really good in the environment that we're in. So on the count of three, we're just gonna bring it in and then let it out, and I'm gonna get started with some storytelling. 1, 2, 3. And now release it. So there's an old story told in many indigenous cultures about a massive forest fire. I want you to take a moment and imagine a vast, lush, green forest. Well, then suddenly a spark catches and a great fire breaks out. It's not just a small brush fire. We're talking about a raging inferno. The animals, the mighty lions, the massive elephants, the powerful bears are overwhelmed. They run to the edge of the forest and they stand there, paralyzed. They are watching their home, their history, and their future burn to ash. They feel small. They feel like the fire is too big to fight, so they do nothing. But then they notice a tiny hummingbird. This little bird flew to the nearest stream, picked up a single drop of water in its beak, flew into the heat and the smoke, and dropped it on the flames. Then it flew back to the stream again and again and again. The big animals laughed. They said, "Little bird, what do you think you're doing? You're too small. That drop won't put out this fire. You're wasting your time." The hummingbird, without stopping its flight, looked at them and said, "I am doing the best I can." In this current climate, especially for many folks who sit on the margins, the fire feels huge. We get distracted by the size of the flames. We think, if I can't fix the whole system, why bother? But radical hope is understanding that your agency, your drop, is the only thing that has ever changed the world. So I want you to sit with that for a moment. Am I doing the best I can? In our current climate, the world can feel like a constant state of gaslighting. It tells you your drop doesn't matter. It tells you that if you can't fix the whole system by Tuesday, you might as well give up. But here is the radical truth. Hope is not a feeling. It is a verb. If you wait to feel hopeful before you act, you will stay frozen. Radical hope is the decision to carry your drop of water while your heart is breaking. When we ask what our best is, we have to realize that our drops of water don't just fall on the fire. They fall on each other. People ask, how do we build caring relationships across differences like race, gender, ability, or lived experience? The answer is found in the hummingbird's flight. It's in proximity. You cannot put out a fire from a distance. Building relationships across differences requires us to stop being spectators of each other's struggles. It requires radical hope to believe that your well-being is tied to mine. We build these bonds by showing up in the fire together, refusing to let the labels the world gives us keep us from the work. So when we talk about cultivating a culture of care, we are talking about the hummingbird. Care isn't just being nice. Care is the intentional action of refusing to let the fire have the last word. So I have to ask you, GRCC, what is your very best in this moment? Not the best of a version of you that isn't tired. Not the best of a version of you that isn't angry. Right now, in this heavy climate, what is your drop? Because despair is the goal of the oppressor. So how do we stay focused with radical hope in this moment? So I want that question to just sit with you as we go through this talk today. I want to say thank you for having me here at Grand Rapids Community College. It's such an honor to be here with you. Before we dive more into the heart of the matter, I just want to say thank you to the organizers of the Diversity Lecture Series for 31 years of courage. Let's give that a round of applause. Thank you for creating this space where we can breathe together. I'm genuinely happy to be in this room with you because in a world that feels increasingly fragmented, the act of coming together in person, heart to heart, in itself is an act of cultivating care. I started with that story because it is the only way I know how to talk about the reality of our current climate. I heard the story last year at a diversity summit for diversity officers. We are truly living in a time of an inferno. And today we are going to talk about what it means to be the hummingbird. We're going to talk about radical hope, not as a feeling, but as a verb and a discipline of care. Now to start, we got to be honest about the fire. When I sat down to prepare this keynote and I thought about radical hope in the context of care, I felt a weight that almost kept me from the keyboard. I struggled, and over these last couple of weeks, I struggled even more. This has changed a few iterations as things have happened during Black History Month. Because it's hard to talk about staying focused when the world is working overtime to blur your vision. It's hard to talk about intentional action and cultivating a culture of care when we are constantly being hit by waves of intentional disrespect. As we celebrate Black History Month, celebrating Black excellence and resilience, we are navigating a moment where our history is being treated like a list of suggestions rather than the bedrock of this nation. We see it in the news cycle every day. We are witnessing an intentional erasure. We see laws being drafted and passed to ban the very stories that gave us the strength to survive. We are seeing our struggle sanitized. And we are seeing chapters of our pain redacted to paragraphs. And we're being asked to pretend that the progress that many of our ancestors bled for was just a natural, inevitable occurrence. We live in a climate today where the mere mention of truth, the act of stating what happened, is treated as a deeper injury than the centuries of refusal to protect it. It is a system that prioritizes comfort over the survival of the marginalized. So let's be clear. This isn't a lapse in judgment. It is the congruency of history. This is done with full strategic operation to overwhelm and bank on our inaction. Not because folks believe the things that they're trying to destroy or erase are false. It's because they know that they are true. It's done to see if they can trigger a despair so deep that you drop your water and give up on the fire. So, knowing all this, I thought, how can I talk about hope? But then I reminded myself that despair is exactly the intended outcome. And if you get paralyzed in this moment of the current climate, you aren't moving. If you are down about the erasure of the history, then you aren't writing the next chapter. So this is why we must cultivate a culture of care. Care for our history, care for our truth, care for each other. Because when we care, we stay focused on the stream and carry our own drops of water. So let me get a little personal as I talk about some of this. You all had an opportunity to hear my bio read before I took the stage, and every time I hear it read, I'm always immediately humbled. I grew up on the west side of Chicago. We got any other Chicago folks out there? Hey, yes, love it. Statistically, the system had a cage waiting for me before I had a diploma. I was more likely to be a casualty of the streets than a college graduate. Many days as I grew up, the air felt so thick with struggle that hope felt like a lie. My own journey wasn't a straight line. My mother had to make the agonizing choice to place me in a group home to keep me safe from the streets. That was her drop of water. While in college, I faced academic probation, and I struggled with the weight of my environment. I am standing here today at this podium, not because I was special, but because I decided to embrace radical hope as a verb. I remember sitting in that group home feeling like a discarded thing, but that experience in hindsight taught me I was already worthy. I had to learn that taking up space wasn't about accomplishments. It wasn't about my right to exist. It was about my right to exist as a human being. I realized that the people who helped me weren't just being nice. They were exercising a collective responsibility for my life. They saw my story as a bridge to theirs, and I am here because I chose to be a hummingbird even when my wings were broken. I realized that my circumstances were the fire, and I decided to be my own hummingbird. And I want to say something directly to all of our students and the community members here with us online. You are already worthy. You do not have to prove your humanity to a system that refuses to see it. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be angry. You are expected to take up space. Cultivating a culture of care starts with caring for the flame inside of you. So stay focused on your worth. We have been conditioned to look for the movement in the headlines, but the truth is that the real firefighting, the heavy lifting of justice, happens in the shadows of the untold stories and the quiet struggles of the nameless fighters. The movement lives in the basements where secret schools were held, in the kitchens where organizers fed the hungry, and in the private, agonizing choices made by mothers and students to simply keep going when the world said stop. To see these efforts as small is a trap of the status quo. They are, in fact, the very definition of staying focused. It takes a bone-deep radical hope to realize that your individual agency, your drop of action, is the pulse of the progress we seek. We must refuse the distraction of needing to be the hero and instead embrace the discipline of being the hummingbird, understanding that doing your best right where you are with what you have is the only way the tide has ever truly turned. So let's take a look at this from a bit of a historical perspective. We are not the first generation to face an inferno, okay? History shows us that the fire is extinguished by 1,000,000 hummingbirds who refuse to be paralyzed. We sometimes think that this must be led by a popular or singular leader. When we think of movements, we look for the podium. We look for the one person with the microphone. But a thought leader who I love, Isabel Wilkerson, in her masterwork, The Warmth of Other Suns, reframes one of the most pivotal shifts in American history as an act of radical hope on a mass, decentralized scale. Between 1916 and 1970, 6 million Black Americans staged what was essentially a leaderless revolution. They were fleeing a Jim Crow South that was gaslighting them, telling them they were nothing more than labor, that their lives were forfeit to the whim of a mob, and that their history ended at the edge of a plantation. This wasn't a leader-led movement. It was millions of families deciding, I will not live like this. They didn't wait for a permit. They just moved. They were an army of hummingbirds. Wilkerson points out that this wasn't a move sanctioned by the government or led by a single Moses figure. It was 1,000,000 individual decisions made in the dark of night. It was a sharecropper in Mississippi, where my family is from, realizing that his best was more than a debt-ridden field. It was a mother in Georgia deciding her children deserved a classroom instead of a kitchen. It was a porter in Alabama using his own feet to vote against the gall of the status quo. This movement changed the very DNA of the United States. It gave us the Harlem Renaissance, the Motown sound of Detroit. We got Detroit here? Ain't no Detroiters here? Come on, okay, I see a few. And the political power of the South Side of Chicago. It was a massive, decades-long verb. The beauty of Wilkerson's research is the reminder that the answer lives in the collective agency of the anonymous. If 6 million people hadn't carried their drops of water across the Mason-Dixon line, the fire of white supremacy would have been unopposed. They didn't wait for a signal, they became the signal. The Great Migration is the ultimate answer to the question, how can we move from isolated acts of kindness to a shared collective responsibility? If one family moved north, it was an act of kindness to themselves. But when 6 million moved, it was a collective reclamation of space. They built neighborhoods where they looked out for one another's children. They created kitchen cabinets of survival. They understood that inclusion isn't a program the government grants you, it's a culture that you build with your neighbor. They moved from I to we, proving that our greatest protection is our shared responsibility for one another's well-being. Many of us are the product of that hope. Those who left the South with nothing but a cardboard suitcase and a dream. We can have that today. We can create that reality through radical hope by staying focused on our own drop of water to carry. So when the world asks you, who is your leader? I want you to remember the Great Migration. And remember that if 6 million people could walk into the unknown of the North without a map, that you are the leader of your own feet. You are the architect of your own migration, away from despair and towards action. You are the hummingbird doing the best that you can. So let's talk about a few others who did their best and carried their drop of water. There's a story often left out of the textbooks that happened in Salem, Massachusetts. When we hear about Salem, what do we usually think about? Witches, right? But at the height of the Fugitive Slave Act, there was a Black woman who was a successful candy maker. Her name was Charlotte Fortin. Now, she could have just focused on her business. She was already up north and thriving. She could have said, I've got mine. I'm safe here in the north. But she didn't. She used her horse and her carriage, the very tools of her livelihood, to carry enslaved folks to freedom. She was a hummingbird. Her drop was a carriage ride. She didn't wait for the Civil War to end slavery. She used her agency to end it one person at a time. Another story often not told. 9 months before Rosa Parks, there was a 15-year-old girl named Claudette Colvin. She was unpolished now, and she was a teenager, and she didn't fit the mold, but she was the first to say no on that bus in Montgomery. She was dragged off the bus for saying that it was her constitutional right. Her drop of water created the ripple that gave the movement its floor. She was a hummingbird in a schoolgirl's uniform. When we share her story, we create a bridge to empathy. We realize that you don't have to be perfect to be a catalyst. Sharing community stories serves as a bridge because it reminds us that the moment was and still is fueled by ordinary people who decided to be heard and do their best and carry their drop of water to the fire. And I'm going to turn this phone off. And it's still fueled by ordinary people who decided to be heard and do their best and carry their drop of water to the fire, even while oftentimes, like the big animals in the story, folks are laughing or asking, "What are you doing that will never work?" I want you all to think about enslaved people who risked their lives to learn to read by candlelight. They knew that if they were caught, the punishment was physical mutilation, but they did it anyway. That wasn't for a degree, it was an act of war. They knew that literacy was a drop of water that would eventually burst the dam of ignorance. They cared for their minds when the world only cared for their labor. Consider the Black Panthers' free breakfast program. They saw hungry children and acted. They didn't wait for a federal grant. They realized that feeding the community was a form of radical hope. They cultivated care in the midst of a fire by bringing their drops of water. All of these stories highlight strategies of how to stay focused and demonstrate radical care, radical hope to cultivate care. They all reflect an individual action that helps usher in a collective responsibility to progress. When I was in that group home, I didn't need a program. I needed a bridge. I needed people who saw my lived experience not as a deficit, but as a different kind of expertise. That is the challenge that I'm leaving for you, GRCC. How are you connecting your story to the person sitting 3 rows away from you? Radical hope demands that we stop acting like islands and that we realize that sharing our stories of struggle isn't a sign of weakness. It's the very architecture of our connection. It is how we build empathy in a world that feels increasingly cold. It's how we bring our drop of water to the fire. So as I begin to close, I want you to remember this. The fire of erasure and the gall of disrespect are designed to make us feel alone. They want us to think that our drop of water is isolated. But radical hope is the bridge. It's the bridge that connects the west side of Chicago to Grand Rapids. It is the bridge that connects the 15-year-old girl in 1955 to the students sitting in the front row today. It is the bridge that turns me into us. Don't just be kind today. Be responsible for one another. Share your story, not to complain, but to connect. Build relationships, not for networking, but for survival. You are the hummingbird. You are the migration. You are the hope. Black History Month is not a museum. It is a call to action. The fire is raging. The gaslighting is real. But remember, despair is not a luxury we can afford. Radical hope is a discipline. It is waking up and choosing to serve your community even when the news makes you want to crawl back into bed. It is mentoring a child when you feel unmentored. It is speaking the truth even when your voice shakes. The fire is big, the world is loud, but look at the person to your left. It's okay to look at them. Now look at the person to your right. We are an army of hummingbirds. As I prepare to leave you, I want to offer you a word that acts as the container for everything that we've discussed today. It is a South African concept you may have heard of, but I want us to really feel it today. That word is Ubuntu. Archbishop Desmond Tutu explained it best. He said that Ubuntu is the essence of being human. It speaks to the fact that my humanity is caught up and bound up in yours. This is the ultimate culture of care. When the world tries to portray our leaders as less than human, when they try to erase our history to protect the myth of harm, they aren't just attacking our past, they are attacking the cord that connects us. They want to break Ubuntu. They want you to think your drop of water doesn't matter because they want you to believe you are alone. But the hummingbird didn't just save itself. It worked because it cared for the whole forest. So, GRCC, we're going to practice some Ubuntu right now. Is that okay? All right. So, we are going to practice staying focused because when we find our collective rhythm, the fire doesn't stand a chance. So I want to do a call and response. And this isn't just for noise. This is to recalibrate our spirits. This is us choosing to be the verb. So if you would stand with me if you can, find a neighbor. And then once you have a neighbor and you're standing, we're going to get started. Look them square in the eye. And repeat after me. Everybody have someone? All right, so repeat after me. I am because you are. I am because you are. You are because I am. You are because I am. When I thrive, you thrive. When I thrive, you thrive. And when you thrive, I thrive. And when you thrive, I thrive. When I fail, you fail. When I fail, you fail. And when you fail, I fail. And when you fail, I fail. I recognize the Creator in you. I recognize the Creator in you. And I hope you see the Creator in me. I am because you are. I am because you are. You are because I am. You are because I am. I love you because I am you. 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 That is your focus, GRCC. That is your radical hope. When you leave this hall, don't ask who will save us. Look in the mirror. Look at the person next to you. The answer has been looking at you your entire life. The fire is big. The gall is heavy. The disrespect is loud. But our water is deep. Our history is solid. And our care for one another is unbreakable. Be the hummingbird. Carry your drop. Protect Ubuntu. And most importantly, stay focused. Thank you for having me. All right, I believe we're taking questions, so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
What language is Ubuntu in?
You know, I believe, that's a good question. I have to check. I want to say it's Zulu, but I don't want to say it too quickly and be wrong. So let me follow up on that one because I don't know exactly off the top of my head. Okay. Thank you for the question, though. Any other questions? Anything come in online?
Would you be willing to tell us about one or two of the hummingbird? Would you be willing to tell us about one or two of the hummingbirds that brought a drop of water into your life?
Yeah, I mean, I would share, the group home, although at the time, right, you're teenager, you're at home, your mom's telling you got to go live somewhere else because she just can't do it anymore. At the time it felt awfully lonely and felt horrible, but looking back, I mean, that was a hummingbird, like that opportunity to be there gave me the opportunity to have access to things that my mom could not provide for me at that time. And with access, what I always share with folks, it helps to breed new expectation, right? I tell folks all the time, I grew up in the projects of Chicago. It's hard to want for something that you don't see, right? I didn't grow up around people who went to college. I didn't grow around people who had careers like the one I have today. How do you frame your mind to go after that in which you don't see on a day-to-day basis? So being at the group home gave me some of my first exposures to some of these things to be able to see. And it gave me a new quench to life to be like, man, I want to do this. And I want to give myself hope, that radical hope to be like, I can achieve this, right? I can do this despite, the path. The other hummingbirds, I would say, and there's probably a million, and I do try to do my very best to, I tell folks all the time, in the moment, and we all know this, you have a younger sister, a cousin, or someone, and you try to tell them that one thing that you know you did, and you don't want them to do it because you know if they don't do it, they'll be better for it, but they still do it anyway, right? Everybody know that, right? I have so many people who tried to do that for me, and while what they said to me in the moment didn't register, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years later, those were seeds that they planted that grew fruit later. And so I try now to go back and say, you planted this seed. You said this thing. And at the time I didn't have a clue, but this is how it served me to be able to get, where I am today. And I see all of those folks, as hummingbirds, because I think it's really easy, especially in times like this, to just feel helpless. Like I'm hearing people all the time, like, I'm not turning on the news. I just, just check me out, right? I want to leave, the country. But when we do that, we give away our agency. We give away the one thing that we can choose to do in cultivating care. And although it may just be the one thing, right? Like Charlotte up there, with her horse and carriage, like it's one thing, but that one thing multiplied by 6 million, right, becomes a movement, becomes impact. So thank you. Yes.
Significant time in your life where you could consider that your drop of water?
Consider that what was my own
Like
personal drop of water?
your own personal drop of water, any like a specific time that you can pinpoint?
Yeah, one of the things that I've, tried to be very intentional about because, like I said, I grew up, with all of the things, right? Like, you want a story, I can give you a story for it, right? And so when I went to college, one of the things that was super important to me is I said, I want to be a social worker, right? Because I was able to have my life impacted by all types of community programs and services. And so once I, graduated and I got my degree, I was a social worker for, a few years. I would say my intentional water carrying was sometimes when you are a person who have to live in some type of residential setting or some type of foster care, folks think they understand, but it's really hard to understand, right? And so for me, being able to be an example of someone when I worked in residential care, right? So now imagine I grew up in residential care, now I'm working there. I was able to connect with those residents in a different way because I could tell them, I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to hear a staff member say something about you that they think you didn't hear and what that does to you, right? And so my intentional drop of water is how do I use my story, right? Because a lot of times in life, we go and we talk about all the good things. Oh, I could talk to you about, oh, I got my PhD, I got these things. But the things that really help people are the things that, let me tell you how I overcame. Let me tell you my struggle. Let me tell you how I made it through. Those are the things that, help folks. And so I've committed to always lead with vulnerability and transparency around that. Not because I want to get up here and tell you all about how hard my life was, because we all have had our own version of what was hard. But I want to be able to say to someone who is in that situation, who is feeling a little despair or feeling like somebody gave up on them and that's why they're in residential care, to say, that doesn't have to be the end of your story. You can still do whatever it is that you want to do in life, right? Does it take a little hard work? Yes. Does it get frustrating sometimes? Yes. Does it feel lonely sometimes? Yes. But is it possible? Yes. And you can't tell me it's not because I'm standing here, before you, right? And so that's a different way to connect with folks with those experiences. So that would be one of the intentional, drops of water that I try to carry. Yeah. Please.
How long have you been spreading the word about radical hope and making the community not only here but like everywhere aware of it?
Yeah, I will say that I've been talking about hope as a verb or radical hope, for most of my, life, because I think sometimes I'm a person, I'm kind of, my worldview is a little bit glass half full, right? So I tell people all the time, I am naturally an optimist. I'm going to look for the good in something. So if you're not one of those persons, I'm probably going to annoy you a little bit, right? Because we could be like going down and I'm going to be like, well, at least we get to come up tomorrow, right? Like that's just how I'm framed. It helps me. It helps me to be able to get through, those times. And so a bit of that has always kind of been with me about how do you reframe, how do you refocus, right? I do believe in being honest, and so I'll sit in the for a little bit, but I'm not a person who can sit there for a long time, right? Like I gotta sit there, feel it. Okay, now what's the plan? How do I change it? How do I impact it? How do I turn it? And so for me, that's what hope is. That's the verb. That's the action, right? It's not what I think sometimes people feel when you say hope. They're like, you may have heard this big thing that came really popular at one point. Hope is not a strategy, but it can be, right? If you look at it as a verb, it can be a strategy and it can lead to action and it can help drive changing of lives, changing of business, changing of cultures, if you implement it. So I would say a little piece of that thread has been with me for most of my life.
Thank you for being here. My question kind of alludes to you're dropping words like radical, hope, being able to face adversity or overcome. So I'm wondering, can you speak to like alignment and purpose and identity and what that might mean for folks who might be still trying to figure out who they are, especially in a time where people are trying to erase their history, erase who they are, show up in spaces where they're not necessarily invited to or belong to. So like those can all mean things that question, invoke fear, seeking out psychological safety. So I'm wondering about purpose and alignment specifically and how that might have been your journey in figuring out how you got to who you are today.
Yeah, and what I would say is that journey for me was a lot with what I talked about in my talk earlier about like worthiness, right? And that's another very intentional thing that I try to talk about. I think, when you are a person who sits on the margins, whatever that margin is, right? Whatever you're questioning, whatever you, think, whether it's around your race or your sexuality or whatever that, kind of what can sometimes feel like very small circle is. You sometimes feel like you have to prove something to show up, right? You feel like you don't have inherently whatever it is just to be able to be you, right? Which is why you start to question, like, why did God do this to me? Or why did I show up this way? Or why did this person get this? And like all of those questions and things. And so I think to your question around like, hey, what's the purpose? So once you can align yourself on like, hey, what do you believe that your purpose is on earth, right? Like, why do you believe that you are here on earth? Which is a whole lot of deep work to kind of, to get to that. But I think the other thing mixed with that I would say is you have to start to reframe your mind to realize that it's not about anything that you can do that is going to lead you to a place where you feel present, seen, heard, and valued. You have to believe you already have that. And each of us have that. And so I spent so many years of my life because I grew up in projects and then I stumbled my way into corporate somehow. And I was in these rooms at McDonald's with these vice presidents and these people with all these titles and all of this money. And sometimes didn't feel like I belonged there just because of my background. And so I worked extra hard trying to prove, like, I'm gonna get this promotion, I'm gonna get this thing. And whenever I got the next thing, it wasn't enough because I still hadn't realized that I was already worthy when I was born. Those things were already mine to have. When I show up in a room, I'm already able to take up space. And so I would say for anybody that's in that place, Jamila, that you're mentioning, I think it is doing that deep work around like, hey, what is your purpose? Why do you, believe? And then what is the story that you're telling yourself about why you do not have worth or you do not have value or you do not have seen? Because that's where the work is. Once I started to do that work for myself, my own mental work around, okay, why do I believe these things about myself? Why do I believe it's bad? Because I happen to grow up in a poor area, right? Like what is that? once I dealt with that and then I was able to walk in, it changed my whole life. It changed how I approach work. Before, I mean, man, you talk about you offered me a job, and I know some of you this will resonate with. When I left social work and I went to Target, was my first corporate job. I was making like $19,273 as a social worker. That's how much I was making a year. It's not about an hour, y'all. And I got the interview, I got the interview, and I got to get Target, and the recruiter said to me, she said, okay, $60,000. And I remember I said this, and don't judge me, but I said this on the phone. I said, okay, where do I go take the drug test? Right? Because I mean, she was tripling what I was doing, like in that moment, right? And I remember we got to Target, we do business college, and you spend 6 weeks in the stores learning and doing their thing. And all these people came and they were talking, and they were like, yeah, I got 64. And I got 66. And somebody was like, I got 70. And I'm like, I only got 60. And they were like, you didn't negotiate? And I'm like, negotiate? It never even dawned on me that I could ask for something different that was being offered, right? So all of this work and understanding my worth, understanding my value, understanding how it changed the way I even approach. Now I only work in places that I feel that not only am I going to bring value, but that value me. And if you don't value me, I'm okay with saying I won't work here. For the longest time, I've always had hair. When I first went to the corporate, they were like, you need to cut your hair because you're going to corporate. So I cut my hair. But during this transition, I said, I'm going to grow my, because I like myself with hair. And if I can't be at a place that appreciates me with hair, it's not the place for me, right? But that's a whole new way. And many of us, especially folks on the margin, we don't show up in that way. We don't think in that way, right? And we have to do the mental work to be able to show up and understand that we can demand space. You don't have to do anything for it. You are already worthy. You are already worthy to be able to be seen. You are already worthy to be able to be valued. You are already worthy to be able to take up space. Nobody can take that away from you unless you give it to them. And I refuse to give it to them. Please.
Which fires are worth being put out, or is it possible to try and put out as many fires as you can?
You know, I think it's what the hummingbird said, right? You know, the hummingbird said, I'm doing the best that I can. And I think our best looks different depending on what's going on, right? And so depending on your question, like what the fire may be, there may be times when my best may not be going to the stream. Like I may not have that in me, right? I have to think about what is my other best, which is why I like that characterization of, are you doing the best that you can, right? Because the best looks so different depending on the context, that we're in. But I would say at large, though, when we think about back to the subject of community of care, right? If the community is on fire, even if my best is not going all the way to the stream and bringing my drop, can I help encourage somebody else on the way to the stream, right? What is the best that I can do to still be a part of the community to help get the fire down, right? And so that's what I would say. So think about what it looks like depending on your context of how you help do that. And that may not always be being on the front line. Sometimes it may be being the support, because folks that's going back and forth, they're going to need people to support them. Just don't be like the big animals, asking somebody else, well, why are you doing that? Because that's not going to stop the fire. Keep that to yourself. Like if you're at that dark of a place, keep that to yourself and let the people who are trying get to what they need to do. Yeah. Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Kind of along the lines of that question too, I think about how, I'm trying to carry so many drops of water, and at times, I just stretch myself too thin. I'm trying to do too much, trying to be too many places, trying to put out too many fires. So what advice would you give for recognizing when you're starting to burn out, if you're burning at both ends and trying to continue to do more, and anything you do as far as strategies to prevent that?
Yeah, I think the best strategy is that you always have to take care of yourself first, right? I know this is a little cliche, but you can't give from an empty well, right? And so if you are empty, if you are not feeling it, it's really hard to give. But it's also not very easy to know what self-care is. And I think that's what we don't talk a lot about. Like we say, take care of yourself, do self-care. What does that mean? How do I show up and do that? How do I actually activate self-care? And I think that's where we have to be really intentional, one, about understanding what is self-care for you. Self-care for me is being alone. Like sometimes I just need to be disconnected by myself. That's how I refill my cup. That's how I get back rejuvenated. And now I can come back out and I can get out there and I can like get my water. For you, it may be something different. So I think the first thing you do is you need to have a plan on what self-care looks like. And then you need to hold yourself accountable to making sure that you do that, because it'll always be easier to say, well, I have to do this or I need to go do that. But if you aren't in a good place, eventually that turns into burnout. Burnout then starts to turn into people becoming really negative about what you're doing, and you don't want your good to eventually be something that you despise because you aren't taking the rest. And rest, y'all, is radical. Okay, rest is an act of war. Like sometimes just to take a moment, to take a break, listen, breathe. Is why I started with a breath today, right? Just to take a moment, take a breath to ground is super, super important. So I would say be intentional, hold yourself accountable, and make sure that you place yourself at the front, because the better you are, the better work that you're going to be able to do to impact others. Yeah, and I think I saw a hand over here.
I wanted to thank you for being here, first of all, even though that 19,000s make me question my major a little bit, but, yeah, we're here.
That was a long time ago. I think it's gotten better.
But I wanted to know if you could speak more to proximity and how it plays a role in it plays a big role in like a child's future.
Yeah, I mean, this is, one of the things that, is also very, near and dear to my heart is, I tell folks, if you can do anything for your children, for your folks, experiences and access. Like it's the best thing that you could ever do. When I left social work and I took a breath, I took a break, I went and spent 6 months in Kenya. Those 6 months in Kenya, I thought I was going to help them. I probably got more help for myself, right? Because when I first got there and I got up to my little place and they were like, okay, we get water and lights from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I said, what? Water goes out from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I hadn't even considered that there are people in the world who don't have 24/7 access to lights and water, right? So just even that experience and understanding that helped me move in the world when I left and came back a little bit different. And so I think that proximity and I think that access and I think those experiences are what really help folks. My dissertation actually talks about that a bit too. Like when you think about DEI, we spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on DEI. And the research tells us when you look at the workforce as a whole, we haven't had that much progress in terms of impact, right? There's been some in some places, but not anything that's just been like overwhelming. I talk about another way, like instead of spending money on trainings and non-biased trainings and let's doing that, let's take that money and let's send a CEO to Kenya. Let's send them to the west side of Chicago to be at a Boys and Girls Club for 2 weeks. Let's send them down, right? Those type of experiences where you get to see and become part of a community and have your paradigm of how you see the world shifted in a way that you're not going to get outside of that type of proximity is very, very powerful. And every time I'm overseas, I try to spend time in those type of places to have those type of moments because it teaches you so much about yourself, about the world, and how you can operate and act in it differently. Please.
This is a little awkward because I have to go to class in like 2 minutes.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask what your personal experience has been with like your relationship between your mind and your body in terms of like what your body's telling you versus what your mind is trying to tell your body, I guess, in doing the work.
In doing the work. That's you want to answer to that in less than 2 minutes? What I'll tell you is I've tried to dive into this a couple of ways in mindfulness. I will tell you I am the worst at mindfulness. Like I try really hard because so many people tell me they get such good impact from being mindful. The closest I get to it is prayer, which is my own personal thing. Like when I'm in prayer, I am engaged in that way. But as it relates to like my physical body and kind of scanning it and connecting it into the work, I'm still growing in that space. Like I've gone to a lot of classes and I've done some things to try to learn it. Oftentimes I feel disingenuine because everybody else is like having this like experience, and I'm like, am I doing it right? And kind of broken. So I think that would be my authentic answer. I think it's something I'm still working on. I don't assess it, in that way. I think I just kind of come, kind of full, and breaking that down in that way, like I have seen for others. And one of my good friends, her name is Dr. Sarah King. Like this is her whole like work, and we talk all the time. And I'd be like, Dr. King, go ahead, do your yoga, do your thing, girl. But it's, I'm not able to dive in that way. So, yeah. But thanks for the question. Please.
I'm just curious how you would recommend for people that don't have the luxury to sit here today and hear your message or the messages by many people that are coming out just due to circumstance. How do we spread the message? How do we effectively go into the community? They don't have the luxury of higher ed. Someday they're just trying to get through their workday, get home, feed the kids, and start all over again. How, as a community, do we rally the hummingbirds?
Yeah, I think it's service, right? And one of the things, I'm new to Grand Rapids. I just moved here from Memphis. I've been here now about like 18 months. One of the things that I have been really impressed with is the amount of service opportunities there are. In the community, I've visited a few organizations that do lots of things that are looking for volunteers to come out. I was talking to Jamelia, one of the she's an alumni of Grand Valley, but she's the executive director of Baxter Community Services Center. Yes, they do amazing work. So I would say in service, we got to get out there. We have to meet people where they are, right? Which is part of what the Hummingbird, is doing. If we can activate folks, because even those who are having that moment, who may be struggling, they have something they can contribute to the fire, y'all. Right? So if you go back to what I was talking about like, hey, I didn't need a program. I need somebody to see me as this thing. I needed somebody to see that my experience, although different, is still valuable. And if we can show up for folks and help them see that no matter where you are right now, you still bring value to what we're doing. You still have a place for what we're doing. That's how we bring them in. That's how we bring them into community. And then that's how we can encourage them to bring their drop of water, as well. A good facilitator told me 11 seconds means there's no more questions. I'm at number 7. 8. Well, thank you all so much. I really have enjoyed myself and my time. Thank you.
There we go. Can y'all hear me okay? Mic check. There we go. All right. Thank you. Can we give another round of applause for Dr. Shorty, please? I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Shorty right when you came to Grand Rapids. So we have been in the same spaces. He has poured into me very quickly without even barely knowing my name. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for being our keynote. Truly appreciate the gems that you dropped in the knowledge, as well as sparking and charging us to be able to find the hummingbirds, right? Be hummingbirds and figure out what that means for us. So thank you so much again. Thank you all for being here. This was the party that I threw for myself. It is my birthday today. So note to self, don't let me do this on my birthday again. No, I'm just playing. So really quickly, in all seriousness, please take a moment to take out your phones and scan the QR code. Feedback and data collection is something that I have a learning curve in, and it's something that I'm trying to embrace and get better at. And when it comes to collecting data and using that and making decisions, your feedback and your voice and your experience because this is not just something where we'll come, gather together, hear some words, and leave. This is something that an experience that we are trying to cultivate. And your voice and your feedback and the things that you let us know that you like and don't like and want to see on our campus, those are the things that I take into consideration when I'm planning and facilitating these types of events. So please, please, please take a moment. It should be short and sweet to offer your feedback, especially if you are from the community. Thank you for being here in the middle of the day and during lunchtime. We really appreciate you being here. And if you need a parking pass or anything like that, please come and see me. I have plenty. And then to see all the things that we are getting involved in, because we do a lot of different things on campus on a lot of different platforms, please follow us on social media. Follow our Raider Connect or Woodrick Center, hashtag GRCC or underscore GRCC on Instagram or Facebook. So thank you again. I appreciate you. Thanks for coming to my party and Robert Shorty's TED Talk. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.